So it's so good seeing you. I've been scrolling through things. I'm going to be back on gallery so I can really feel like we've come together consciously this Holy Week. Uh, Holy Week in the Sikh tradition, Christian tradition, just making it through. I know my friends' kids were at Passover camp. So take a breath and wherever you are, just drop in. That's good. Just see if you can just settle in right here, right now. And aware that we're together in community. Your bum is right here on the chair, the cushion, the thighs, feeling the foundation, your pelvic bowl. Possibly the feet on the ground. And tuning in as we begin on how you doing. How's your nervous system this day? Are you in your zone of well-being, or are you stuck on low or stuck on high? Stuck on low is more when we feel kind of tired in a numb way. Stuck on high, just stirred up. And I went to the grocery store today, and that was kind of a stuck on high, including like 3 aisles of candy. Oh my goodness. Find where you are. Inviting your body to settle, aware of the bones that hold you up, the chair and the room. Get aware of the vertical energy that runs through us and the horizontal that runs through us. If you can invite in a resource for your well-being this night, this day. And just ask your nervous system what it would like. Resource could be a beloved piece of music, a favorite poem. For some of us, a memory of being with Thich Nhat Hanh, memory of being together. Lighting up the incense of our hearts in this moment. Brightening our heart with the resource of well-being. Maybe it's the energy of calm or of humor. of light. Good. And see if you can relax even more, knowing you're safe. You can check in with yourself. Do I feel safe in this moment? Am I comfortable? See what you can do to get just a little more comfortable so you can enjoy this short time we're together with the nourishment of the Dharma. And this is what's most important, is that we're together. Checking in with your nervous system, see if there's any one more thing it might like. As we come more into the zone of well-being. End of our time, we'll extend the light from our practice of being together in different parts of the world, different ages, different faith traditions, different cultures. Generated a lot of light, so just let some of it settle into your head and shoulders, front and back. As Matt said, nothing to do and no place to go for the next hour or so. Matt, if you could invite the bell.
Greetings, beloved ones. Glad to see you. Hope you're as well as you can be at this moment. I want to share with you first the ground underneath Civic Dharma, in my view, and then some thoughts on Civic Dharma itself. For me, the ground of Civic Dharma is the vow of the Bodhisattva. And the Lotus Sutra, which I encourage you to study, is one of the most chanted Buddhist sutras in the world. And it's even more famous because Tina Turner has recorded it online. And because it summarizes all the Buddhist paths and realizations in one statement, kind of, which is that everyone is already a Buddha and no one is barred from the door of Buddhahood. There's always the potential of healing and transformation of ourselves and one another. A kind of poem for you. Wow, already Buddha, seated before born. Everyone, all, the timeless time. Perceptions of friend and foe melt away. Born of emptiness, born of impermanence, born of nirvana, our true identity is found. Mission embodied, never disparaging, respect, honoring, the practice of non-othering, measuring life in the happiness you gave to others, the suffering that was healed, the broken hearts made whole, the joy with none others in the light of tears and pain. Civic Dharma is simply the understanding that the smallest drop is in the largest cloud, and the largest cloud is in the smallest drop. In honor, we arrive in the here and now without grudge or suffering leaking. A real smile opens hearts. Thinking, speaking, and behaving like our lives matter. We walk with the equanimity of the great elephant, Sumatra Vajra. The Lotus Sutra, besides the statement of that the Buddha is a universal reality, awakening is a universal thing. It is not possessed by one person or another, by one culture or another. Awakening is a human experience. So it clearly states that, but it also states that the primary practice of a bodhisattva is the practice of non-disparaging. And the bodhisattva, everyone is glad to see. That's a much harder practice, for me anyway. The non-disparaging bodhisattva, one of the great examples I have of that came to my mind is from the book on St. Francis by Nikos Kazantzakis. There's a section on St. Francis and Leo. They're out walking around town trying to establish their ministry, and people start throwing stones at them. And Leo wants to drag back, and Francis says, no, no, Leo, tell them whoever throws one stone at me may be once blessed by God. Whoever throws two stones at me may he be twice blessed by God, and so on. That's the non-disparaging attitude of the Bodhisattva. It is respect for all of life. It is honoring the suffering and pain even behind horrible thinking and behavior, because the potential for healing and transformation is already in us. Another example is non-disparaging for me is the poem Recommendation that Thich Nhat Hanh wrote after some of his students of the Youth for Social Service who were tending to people who were wounded and hungry during the Vietnam War. Whichever side they're on, they were tending to them. And then 6 of their students were murdered. one day. And that night, Thich Nhat Hanh wrote this poem to encourage the students to go back out in the field the next day. It's called Recommendation. Promise me this day, promise me now, while the sun is overhead, exactly at the zenith. Promise me even if they strike you down with a mountain of hatred or violence, even if they step on you and crush you like a worm, even as they dismember and disembowel you, remember, humans are not your enemy. The only thing worthy of you is compassion, invincible, limitless, and unconditional. Hatred will never let you face the beast in humanity. One day, when you face this beast alone, with your courage intact, your eyes kind, untroubled, even as no one sees them, out of your smile will bloom a flower, and those who love you will behold you across 10,000 worlds of birth and dying. Alone again, I will go on with bent head, knowing that love has become eternal. On the long, rough road, the sun and the moon continue to shine. It is a very deep practice to engage in life in a non-disparaging attitude, way of thinking and speaking and behaving. In the days of the civil rights era, which I think needs to be a responsibility era instead of rights era, the civil responsibility, um, we always prayed before big events. We always reminded ourselves that there was something larger we was connected to as we gathered together, whoever we were at that time, however many people there were at that time. Non-disparaging. Non-disparaging practice I've been working on for myself, and what I have discovered is the easiest thing to do, because we've been conditioned to do it, is to other one another. And our language structure is focused on othering in many ways. We other each other by rank, by skin, by gender, by non-gender, by height, by weight, by place, by geography, by thought. We constantly are in the process of pushing each other away. So how can we come together when our language patterns other us? And when I started to discover this, I'm working on a poetry collection. I went back through all of my poems and looked back over where I ended up othering somebody else, making them not me, not fully human, not possessing the potential or the reality of being a Buddha in front of me, whether I agree with them or not. This does not mean, how should I say this? My mother was a lover of people, but in her mind, that meant she was a lover of justice, whoever you were. She was not going to stand for injustice. And so our images of love have been so captured by the romantic genre, we forget that justice, love is a real thing. And it's important to remember that in Buddhism, many people ask, I just came back from a conference at Princeton, and Peggy and I, and many people ask, what does the Buddha have to do with social change? I like for everyone to remember the Buddha's model for social change was to withdraw from the society in which he lived and build an alternative, which was the early Sangha. So the Buddha did not go into politics, though he consulted with kings and princesses, etc. But he built an alternative. He demonstrated another way to live. So however we do that is what we must do, is to demonstrate another way to live. People do not respond to just ideas or thoughts or opinions. They respond to experiences that they have with other people. And this demonstration of kindness, of compassion, of joy, shared joy, your capacity for sharing joy with others, and your capacity for peace is a powerful thing and can transform someone else's life quite easily. Now, how does this fit in to what has been called the 12 aspects of Civic Dharma historically? I have some notes of my own later, but generosity is one. So for me, everything in Buddhism is practical. So I ask myself, how generous have I been? Toward whom? Who have I withheld from? And then I ask myself, why? And then I go to another level of practice with my own mind, my own perception, my own grudges, my own jealousies, etc. Moral character. Boy, we have a problem with that one. Uh, the keystone of a healthy society is moral character. It's respect and honoring and consideration and benefit of the doubt. That's what we need as human beings to evolve and grow and learn. Another word that comes out of the tradition is uprightness. To have an upright society means to have a society that is not living in delusion, not living in manufactured reality, but in real reality. I have often wondered, and I'm really wondering now, what would happen to the world if our political process became evidence-based instead of manufactured idea-based? And so we spend hours and money and time arguing about ideas and doing nothing practical. And that doesn't make any sense to me. When I worked in healthcare and hospitals, I was in the era in which evidence-based medical practices were starting to come into the fore. Made a huge difference in the quality of care and the efficiency with which people were cared for. Uprightness. We need an uprightness revolution in America, and probably where you are. If you're not here, you need one of those too. Gentleness. Oh boy. What would it mean to have a gentle society? I don't mean a society that is in indifference. I mean a society that is actively gentle, actively at ease, actively willing to make you at ease, to make us at ease. Gentleness. It's something far, far from our experience on a daily basis, where I live anyway. Gentleness is seen as a weakness. Whoever thinks that does not know much about human evolution. We did not get here by being ungentle. We got here by being gentle enough to learn from one another. A society in which individuals are capable of self-regulation and managing our own nervous systems. And, or if we do not manage them well, we end up living our life at the dorsal state of our vagus nerve, which is numbness, and frozenness, or we end up living our life in the fight flight zone of our nervous system and we never get out of it. We take it to every meeting, to every discussion, to every interaction. And when we're in that state, we cannot even understand what another person says very well, or what we say very well. You know, it's like when you had a big argument with somebody, and then you all of a sudden go, "What were we arguing about? I can't remember." and and so we practice in order to achieve a state in the vagus nerve model called the ventral vaga, a state of peace and a state of calm for the purposes of being clear. Achieving calmness is not just to be calm. It is to, like you settle the sand in the glass of water and it comes down to the bottom, and then finally you can see clearly. The purpose of calm in the practice is for insight, is for deep looking, so that we can look without prejudice. Or if we have prejudice, we can know it in ourselves and not pretend we don't. We can look without habits controlling our conclusions. You know, thousands of signals, electrical signals, come in from the universe into our nervous system, and we interpret them all in our daily life, which is normal. But it's important to be aware of our interpretations. They matter. They really, really matter. Self-control, self-regulation is the ground of a healthy society. Because when you have self-regulation, not perfect regulation, but self-regulation, you have a chance of having co-regulation. And when you have a chance of having co-regulation, you have a chance of having co-imagination. And so from that model, you can see we have a ways to go. Though you can do all three at once if you practice in a group. The absence of anger. Society cannot be driven by anger. It's because anger is a flash of emotion in the body's response to distress and can respond before you think. That's simply it. It's like fire. Once it gets out, it's hard to control. And so to learn to manage our own aggressiveness, our own disappointment, and our reactivity to life, to other people, to ideas, is very, very important if we are to live together. Or we live in a society that is on the surface polite, underneath the surface is full of ill will, like an iceberg. Everybody's nice up here, but once you get below the surface, it's rough waters. It's cold water. And that can be changed. We're not stuck with anything. That's the wonderful thing about understanding impermanence and emptiness. Nonviolence, ahimsa, non-harming, a society that values not harming one another or not harming any part of life, though life does have harm in it. It's not an idealistic approach. It is a deep intention that everything and everyone around you can be well. Everything and everyone around you has a right to be in this world. Patience. Oh, boy, does that require a lot. Just think of that. Go to a town hall meeting, go to a city hall meeting, go to a school board meeting, and you start to understand the practice of patience. But we have to have patience with one another. We have to learn how. We've not really had a chance to learn how. We've learned how to be separated and have our opinions. We have not learned very well how to be in the same room with people who have different opinions. than our own. Agreeability, skillfulness in avoiding conflicts you don't need to have. Or there used to be a saying you may have heard, to choose your battles carefully. I used to do consulting with Fortune 500 companies, and I often saw a lot of energy spent on the wrong thing. And I used to do an exercise with CEOs, and I'd have them write on one piece of paper their priorities for the week, no more than 5. And then I'd have them do a percentage of their time looking back at their priorities. And inevitably, they spent 80% of their time on other things than priorities. And so look at your life and see what you're putting your time into. What are you investing in? For yourself, for your family, for your community? And learning how to agree. I think this is something we have to learn. Many of us don't know how to agree. Many people think love is fighting. And fighting is a state of mind. And everything I'm saying about the Bodhisattva being non-othering in relationship to the world and to other people in particular takes place in the 10 realms of our life. Takes place whether we're in the hell realm or the hungry ghost realm or the animal realm or the human realm or the azura or the fighting realm mind. All these are states of mind. They're not brick buildings. And we all go through these states. But in every state, a bodhisattva is present. We can handle our life. When Thich Nhat Hanh was asked once by a young man or a young woman, I'm trying to remember, why was the Buddha smiling if there was so much pain in the world? Thich Nhat Hanh said, because the Buddha knows how to practice with his pain. So learning how to practice with your pain, with your suffering, with your distress is a skill. And it begins with being able to recognize your pain, your stress, and call it by its true name. Call it by its true name. And then look a little closer at it, lightly, and see how it came to be. And maybe you don't know how it came to be. Maybe you discover how it came to be. And once you discover how it came to be, you can discover how it cannot come to be. This for me is all about self-care. Learning to constantly love ourselves. We are full of mystery, depth, and greatness. Yet we walk through the world like cartoon characters. There's no need for that. The notes I have on my own notes on Civic Dharma to myself, and I'm working on this, and I would encourage you to work on it also. There's been a long tradition in Buddhism of being involved in society. Some of us have incomplete images. One of the advantages I had of studying Buddhism was I got to study the history from around the world, from every culture in which it has been manifest. And there's been everything from rebellions in Buddhist history to all kinds of protests for thousands of years. This is not new. Being involved in society is not new to the Buddhist practice. Running orphanages, starting schools is not new. That's been going on for thousands of years. So the issue I see we face now and was faced then, I'll use a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. I found it impossible just to sit in the temple and be quiet when there were bombs dropping outside. That's clear as you can get. And wherever we are in the world today, we have our own equivalent of bombs dropping. Though some are much more dramatic, as in Ukraine and other places. But we all have the equivalent in our existential experience of things falling apart. So the principles for me of Dharma, civic Dharma, civic meaning we are in society. The tradition in Buddhism called humanistic Buddhism, it was about 100 years old. And the philosopher, which was from China, a monk said, well, the Buddha was born in the world, so he has to be a human being. And so trying to demystify a lot of the interpretation of Buddhism for the West took place in the context of religion. But Buddhism in its beginning was not a religion. It was a therapeutic practice, and it still is today. Some people can practice it as a religion, but its benefits lie in its therapeutic value for your own healing and your own transformation and your own awakening. The principles of the Dharma in civic life for me are practicing non-duality. This is back to othering again, how easy it is to other someone else. Another thing I discovered over the years is that every action, thinking, speech, and behavior is a social action. There are not some things that are not a social action. And I've worked in communities, in villages, in corporations, in schools, in hospitals, and I tell you, there is no action that is not social. To be human is to also have an interior life. We have an interior life. How elegant our interior life is a matter of learning and practice. Some of us may not want to have an interior life, and so we spend all of our time doing things that keep us away from that. Call it reflection, call it meditation, call it looking inside, call it watching your mind, listening to your heart, or whatever language you would like. And there are tools that people have used for years to do that, journaling, etc. Art and other ways that can be manifest. But it's very important to know that what you don't deal with internally becomes the external reality of your society. Carl Jung wrote a book, a small book, a few years ago, in which he basically said that someone asked him after the war in a concentration camp, what do you think the future holds for the world? And he said, the future will hold whatever it is inside of us that we don't deal with now. Whatever shadows we hide from, whatever narratives we tell ourselves that don't fit the reality of life itself, what we do not attend to will be our downfall. And we can attend to it. That's the great news of the Lotus Sutra. Everybody can attend to it. Even the people I don't like can attend to it. Isn't that wonderful? One year at Plum Village, we're still kind of small in early days of retreats there, and whenever there's a lay person problem, the monastics would often come to Peggy and I to solve it. And Peggy would often get people who were having mental health issues, and I would get people who were having behavioral issues. And someone came into a meeting room. I was sitting there with Thich Nhat Hanh, and they were looking out the window on the street, and they said, "There's a man smoking out there." And Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Yes, I know, but he's smoking less than yesterday." That's non-disparaging bodhisattva. That's the non-disparaging mind, the non-othering attitude that can lift people up. What I see in our world today is a failure to lift each other up. Our worthiness, our greatness, our gifts and talents, our beauty needs to be lifted up, needs to be honored, respected, celebrated. Meditation, in my view, has been quite popularized in the last 20 years, more, maybe more, both in neuroscience, which is more my bailiwick, but in general, I think it's important to know that meditation is not just a technique, but a path of healing and transformation. Meditation can go really as deep as you can go. It's not a one-trick effort. We have a calligraphy by Thich Nhat Hanh here that says mindfulness is a path, not an instrument. That's very important to know when you are engaged civically, and you always are. Whether you want to be or not, you're having an impact on society. Another principle I'm coming to learn is that our ancestors are always with us, not just in our genes, but in our sensibilities, in many of our, how do I say it, orientations toward habit and feeling. We're learning more of this in science now about what gets transmitted from one generation to another. We're learning now more about how trauma affects the nervous system and the body itself, from weight gain to suicidal thought to collapse to aggression. Is just astounding what we used to think was just somebody acting bad, not behaving. And now we know they grew up and people around them were murdered. Trauma is not just a bad feeling. It is a bio-neurological impact that changes your capacity to be human. But it can be healed. And all of us have trauma, whether we want to or not, both individual and collective. And my concern is we do not yet understand we have a collective trauma on our hands. Another way to say that is we have a collective dysregulation of society on our hands. Or you might say we have become unglued with ourselves, between ourselves, among ourselves. If you've been practicing meditation or some other spiritual tradition for a while, one piece of advice I found helpful was from Master Empty Cloud, one of the most recent modern Zen masters in China. It says, when you practice a long time in a spiritual tradition, you will get to the point where you wake up on 100-foot pole. you will wake up and discover your next step will require that you let go of your ego. And that's a big step for everyone, all the time. The 10 realms of hell, of animal, human, etc., hungry ghosts, and so on, are realms of practice. They're not realms of defeat. They're states of mind we all have already in us, born with, inherited. And in every one of those states of mind, there's also the Buddha mind available. There's also the Bodhisattva heart available. There's a sagely wisdom available in whatever state of mind we find ourselves in. Meditation for me has become not simply sitting or lying down, though I do that, and I'm grateful for it. But I have started to learn how to meditate all the time, how to meet my mind all the time, which is not always pleasant, but it is becoming all the time. I'm closer to myself, what I think, what is my heart's desire, what my deepest wishes are, where my pains are, where my doubt is, where my fear is lurking. I am closer to myself. And because I am closer to myself, I am happier with myself. I am not disappointed in myself for being a human being because I already know that's all I can be. And I already know I was sent here as a bodhisattva to this planet. You should know that about yourself too. You stepped out of the nirvana realm into this world to bring peace, to bring healing, and to count your success in life by the number of people you made happy. Count your success in life by the number of people who you helped heal a broken heart, or you gave a lift up in any way you helped. Remember this about yourself and about others. Sincerity of heart is a true gift we can give one another. The first, the 8 Realizations of Great Beings Sutra, which is a little challenging for some people. But the first verse reminds us that all political and economic systems are impermanent, just like we are. It's no different than we are. And it's okay to be impermanent. It's all right. And because we will always be impermanent. You can trust in that. And there's some joy in knowing that clarity. We will always be in the arms of emptiness and interbeing wherever we go and wherever we are. And so when we work in the world with our projects, whatever those projects may be, we bring this heart, we bring this mind to that effort. Otherwise, we can get caught in the emotions of the majority. And rarely do the emotions of the majority lead in the right direction. Sometimes they do, but to be mindful of what the emotions of the majority are is very important to civic dharma. In the Old Testament, there used to be, it was famous for prophets, and they kind of had 2 roles. And there's many great stories of prophets in the Old Testament, which I used to teach. But basically, they had 2 things the prophet would say. when everybody was like, oh, everything's wonderful, everything's perfect, prophets would say, woe be unto you. That's not true. Okay, or when everybody was down and out and we can't do anything in the lower dorsal of our vagus system, they would say, the Lord is coming. It's a brand new day right around the corner to create the balance we need to evolve. So ask yourself, who is it in your life right now? Who is it that you can reach that needs to hear a non-disparaging word from you? Who do you need to say thank you to? Who do you need to write a gratitude note to? Who do you need to offer a smile to? Who do you just need to be peace with? You just sit there and you don't say anything, you don't do anything. Who do you need to listen to? However many times you have to listen to the same story. But your genuine listening from the heart is a healing gift. I know we live and work in many places around the world, but it's important to remember we meet always in the Dharma. We meet in the practice of coming home to ourselves and coming home to one another. And this coming home is our great journey at this moment. And if enough of us come home, we actually can create a new one with the benefits of the old one. You know, Americans, we have this habit of wanting new things, and we think having new things means old things aren't good anymore. And sometimes that's true, but it's not a view I have. I have learned that history is a great teacher. Many lessons we can learn from the people and organizations who've gone before. We need not ignore them. We need not disrespect them. There's a lot to learn, always a lot to learn. And so I am grateful that we have the kind of heart and mind that brings us here, that brings us into the school board, into the voting booth, into there's a great group in Oakland who during the Vietnam War, it's called the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, which I know them quite well. During the Vietnam War, they held protests on the railroad tracks so weapons could not be delivered. Always be asking ourselves, where do we need to put our bodies? Because that makes a difference. Where do we need to go? When we lived on Vashon Island in the Northwest during the Iraq War, every Friday, every corner in town, downtown, there were women standing in black. And every time you saw them, you knew they were saying, no more war. But they never had to say a word. You knew when you saw them why they were standing there. We need to express ourselves, communicate with ourselves. And remember, symbol is the key to this. I have never forgotten seeing those women standing on the street corner. And they never said a word to me. I have never forgotten that. I have never forgotten seeing Martin Luther King's robe he wore there where he is buried. I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten running into him in the men's room by accident. I have never forgotten that. So many things what have you never forgotten that have been precious in your life? Recall that for yourself every day, something from that, so that you know you're not alone. You never have been alone. As the recommendation poem says, and those who love you will behold you across 10,000 worlds of birth and dying. So we come to our civic duty and responsibility, not just rights. I think that's a really something we got to change. Everybody think they have rights, but they have no responsibilities. What? How does that work? Where's the reciprocity here? I heard someone say, "Oh, we can leave that up to somebody else." Am I immediately responsible? No, you don't. You don't leave things up to somebody else. You take responsibility for being here. My first trip to India long ago, I, of course, arrived very late, 2 a.m. in the morning, and the luggage rack wasn't working correctly. And so people's luggage was getting piled up all over the place, messed up, damaged. And so I started moving the luggage. And somebody thought I worked there. Yeah, I work here now. I'm trying to straighten this out. What do you need to work at now? What's in reach of your precious hands, your precious heart, your precious feet, where you can create more happiness, where you can create more healing, where you can create more joy, more peace, more rest, if rest is what's needed. William Covey, who wrote a book some time ago, had a great insight I want to share with you. You may have heard it already, but he says it's very important to know the difference between your circle of influence and your circle of concern. Many of us have concerns that preoccupy our energy, but we can't do anything about them. What's in reach of us is what we can do something about. So look at what's in reach of you. What are you near? People, places, things. What are you close to that can help bring to be what you would like to see where you are living become? But work at it, because I assure you, people who think differently are working at it. We always knew this in the civil rights movement. It was said to us, please remember, what you're doing is wonderful. There are people who are doing the opposite with more time and more money. So work harder. Don't give up. Pray. Come from the heart so you have energy to deal with hatred. So you have energy to deal with depression. So you have energy to deal with what you consider to be failure. Keep up the practice. Keep your buoyancy. Keep yourself alive. That is why you are here. You know, sometimes you may have felt in your life like, I really don't belong here. I'm not sure I belong on this planet. Well, you do and you don't. You belong in the ultimate dimension. You belong in the land of the Bodhisattva. But now you have taken form in this messy place. And so we have to practice remembering where we came from so we can bring that energy into healing this messy place, not hating it, not wishing you were somewhere else. I was just today overwhelmed by wonder. I asked Peggy how many trees does she think we have in the back here where we are. I think there's 1,000 or more. It's just incredible. Uh, and that made my day. So figure out how every day you can get a dose of wonder, awe, the remarkability of being alive in the here and the now, and the preciousness of that. There's some times we need to get together in small groups and share dreams with one another. For a long time, we only got together in small groups to say what was wrong with us. In fact, there are some groups you couldn't get into unless you had a good speech about what was wrong with you. I went through that. I know what I'm talking about here. So, what would it mean to have a small group that practice love, loving speech, loving listening? Wow. And how that could change I'll just say, our neurological structure in our brain. We have enough research now to know that mindfulness practice, meditation practice, rosary practice, and other kinds of ritual practice, and mantra practice, actually changes can affect the shape of your brain as well as its functions in an enhanced way. My dissertation was on neuroplasticity and the brain and meditation. And even 20 years ago, it was already clear that there are physical effects, positive effects to meditation and mindfulness practice for the body, not just the mind. And so take care of yourself. I know sometimes you may not feel like it, but you are a precious one. And maybe there's somebody you need to tell that to, that they are precious. Thank you.